Hi, we're John and Amy Clausen, and we are the co-founders of Go Fam Ministries. We love all things family and are the proud parents of 8 children ranging from ages 12 to 27. And we have the beautiful privilege of also being the grandparents of 2 beautiful grandchildren.
We are so passionate about family, and so we were very anxious to be able to share information with you regarding family and how important it is to this world. Family is a very unique word. There's no other word like it. It's super powerful. And what we're seeing in the world today is a lot of redefining and diluting of the word family. And I think today is the most important time that we are intentional about the power of family and how important it is. So if we can share our heart with you a little bit, it's our privilege certainly to do that. Amy and I like to teach about something called primary relationships. It's a sociological term that's been used to describe family relationships and how important they are. Primary relationships are husband and wife, parents and children, brothers and sisters. Super important. It's kind of the glue of all society. And in fact, other sociologists would say that as family goes, so goes the culture. And so when we're looking at our culture, or we're concerned about our culture, or we're confused about our culture, it really boils back down to family and connecting with those primary relationships, because we really believe that when those relationships are strong, the culture is strong. Yeah. And so this is more than just exhorting you to have strong, healthy families. This is really about the culture of our world today. And in those primary relationships, the husband and wife relationship is the most important. We say it's the primariest of all primary relationships because it's the critical piece and it needs to be considered first. And so we like to describe, primary relationships from a priority standpoint. And so it's really critically important. If family is that important, then we have to consider these relationships prior to all other human relationships. And that first most important relationships are husbands and wives. And so we have to connect first with husbands and wives and then channel all of our energy and our priority towards that relationship first. And then we talk about parents and children and brothers and sisters, critical, important primary relationships that we look at. And we consider those prior to friendships, prior to peer relationships, prior to other families, prior to our job. These are the most important piece a piece of connectedness that we have in society. Yeah. And so if that's true, and we believe that to be true, which I think most people do, then we need to focus all our firepower on making sure that those relationships are strong and healthy.
Yeah, and I think that it's important too when we are gearing our hearts towards our children and that primary relationship, that we realize that how we spend our time matters. And I think sometimes that we get into the mindset that we're in a time lack. And I think as a nation, as a society, we do operate in like a time deficit, just like our budget of money. Sometimes we are so scheduled or have allocated our time with no margin that it doesn't allow for the expansion or the mobility that's required in family relationships. Anybody who's ever parented a 2-year-old knows that they do not operate on schedules. And that when we are spending our time as moms and dads and we're so busy and need to get out the door by such and such a time, we miss the opportunities that it actually takes to parent our children when they're throwing a fit because they feel rushed or they don't understand why the hurry and they land on the floor. Those are, if there's margin in our lives and time in our lives, then we can take a breath and actually help our children learn to navigate those things with maturity. But it takes time on our part, or else all we're doing is grabbing them and putting them in the car seat and dealing with it later, which means dealing with it never. And so it's very important as moms and dads that we leave space in our world for our children to be children. It's sometimes inconvenient, and that needs to be okay, and we need to expect that. And the other thing about our time is our kids love to spend time with us. That's just children. They enjoy spending time with moms and dads, And when we take the time when they're 2, 3, 4, and 5 years old to play and enjoy life together, that translates into 13, 14, 15-year-olds that actually enjoy spending time with mom and dad because we have built that in to the fabric of our family.
Mm-hmm. And what we've discovered is it really doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah.
It's just that quality of time. And there's kind of the expression that love is spelled T-I-M-E, and I think that's really true. And kids so want to connect with mom and dad. And it can be as silly as, just roughhousing on the floor, playing cards, playing out in the yard. It doesn't really matter. But again, it's prioritizing and connecting with our children that way.
Yeah.
There's a couple studies that I've looked at just about families, just because this is what we do in our time and in our ministry. A couple pieces of connectedness that are so critical, especially in the time that we live right now. One is eating meals together. It seems to be a lost art. Back to the Beaver Cleaver and the Brady Bunch. I mean, that's what they would always do. And now, because we're so busy and disjointed and other distractions that we have, mealtime is actually sometimes a lost art.
Yeah.
But studies have actually shown that families that actually eat together, it's such a simple thing, actually carve out a piece of time where they actually sit down at a table and have a meal together. It's actually been shown to shown that kids actually have a reduced amount of anxiety and stress. And they actually are more willing to open up to parents when you actually sit down at a table and have a meal. And that's a 20, 30-minute meal. But it actually makes a difference in actually their psychology, makes a difference in depression and anxiety statistics. So it's a simple thing that we can do. And that means turning other things off, especially television and other distractions, and especially that little glowing box that we all carry around. Which leads me to the second, thing that we've been studying and looking into is really the danger of social media and our mobile phones, our cell phones, our smartphones, and how they pull away from connectedness.
Yeah.
And there's no greater example. We've all seen it. We've all gone to a restaurant and have seen couples sitting and not talking to each other, but just looking at their phones. We've seen kids completely disconnected.
Yeah.
Amy and I just went on vacation and we're sitting around a pool, and all of the kids had their cell phones, not even looking at the beautiful scenery or the things that were happening around. And it's a cultural problem. And again, studies have shown that families that actually, I've heard the term sacred spaces, meaning that when we sit down and eat, when we go out to eat, when we are talking on the couch, when we're in the car, different times that you can carve out to say that this is a no phone zone.
Yeah.
And studies have shown that creates an incredible amount of health in families, and parents need to be super proactive, because these cell phones, these computer boxes that we carry are very damaging, very dangerous. Not only just from time, but the things that they're looking at and the things that their undeveloped brains are having to manage. Parents need to be super proactive and carve those spaces. So sacred spaces is something we highly recommend, to be very proactive with families and find out what those times would be.
And so the other thing that I want to mention is that when we're talking about having meals together, we're not talking about like roasting a turkey and having, all the sides to go with it. It can be mac and cheese that's prepared, but that there's a welcoming space that all of you are together. The together part's important, not the what you're eating. So sometimes when we make it feel like it has to be more than it actually is, it becomes our excuse for doing the vital part of just sitting down. That takes no money, no resources, and barely any groceries in order to accomplish that task. And so waiting for the perfect scenario is detrimental to family life. Just capture the scenario. Whatever it looks like today, take time to sit with your kids. And I think that transfers into play and what we do with our children. When we think, you look at social media and you see the things other people are doing with their families, and you set that high bar for yourself, and you're like, well, I can't do that. I can't take my kids over to the beach because I have to work on Saturdays. And so, well, no, just take your kids to the backyard and throw a couple water balloons at them. It doesn't need to be anything big. Create what you can create to do family memories your way.
Well, we do. I mean, if as family goes, so goes the culture. If that's true, then we all have family culture. We all have different cultures. For the Clausens, it's play. We love to play. We work hard, we play hard. So we tend to try to get our work done with the idea that then we get to go play.
Yeah.
And it's a great family culture. It's been a healthy culture, and I just highly recommend that to you. So there might be things you wake up in the morning with a little bit of a to-do list. I've been known to have a couple of those.
It starts with put your work clothes on.
But there's value in that too. And some of my favorite childhood memories is raking leaves with my dad. And so some of those things are hard work, but those are also valuable. But then when the work is done, then we carve out playtime. And so that's part of our family culture.
Yeah.
And so play is such a critical piece to healthy family. We can't recommend that enough. And it doesn't have to be hours and hours.
No.
It can be 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there. But kids absorb that and they love it so much, and it creates such a healthy family environment.
It's awesome.
I just want to talk briefly too about just the environment of having children and the things that we can do to help protect them,
Yeah.
because we live in a world that whether we like it or not can be filled with some things that are hard for children to navigate. There's part of our brain called the prefrontal cortex. Sits right here. And that has to do with decision making and planning and seeing consequences of actions. And it might surprise you to know that our prefrontal cortex doesn't really develop, especially for men, until you're about 25 years old. And so we have these 12, 13, 14-year-olds that are having to navigate a lot of adult situations that was actually never theirs to carry in the first place. And that breaks our heart, honestly, when we see that. Again, social media tends to inject parts of society and life to children way before they have the maturity to actually handle it. When we talk about some dating and physical intimacy things and obviously things with just personal interaction in life, they're not old enough to deal with that. And so we as parents can actually insulate our children from some of those things. And some of that starts at home with even our own conversations that we carry, because we as adults, we as parents, we do carry adult things, finances, even marital strife, relational issues, job stresses. These are things in our own life that we manage that we don't have to expose our children to. Their little brains aren't really wired to handle some of that stuff yet. And so just some practical family advice is some of the conversations that we can have as adults can be private and need to be private, need to be removed from our children, so that they don't feel like they have to carry some of that heaviness that's happening in the house.
Yeah.
And of course that also goes just with their own social issues that they're dealing with. Friends, parties, drugs, alcohol, the availability of some of those things. We absolutely have the role as parents to safeguard our children in that regard.
Yeah.
It's really, really critical. There's a term called helicopter parenting, which actually makes me a little angry, honestly, because I believe that's a term that's been created to actually shame parents from doing what they're actually called to do. Which is actually hover over their children and care for them and protect them and nurture them and watch over. That's what we're actually called to do. Yeah. And children need that. That's our role. And I don't think we should ever relinquish that.
Yeah, for sure. And along with some of these things, I think one of the best things moms and dads can do is be involved. And we're not talking like saying helicopter parent, like we're being overly controlling and micromanaging. That's not what we're talking about. But being involved, as moms and dads, knowing what our kids are doing, knowing who their friends are, knowing what their activities are, how they're spending their time. What do they do with their phones and computers? What sites are they accessing? Are there things questions that we need to ask because we love them? And we're actually doing our jobs of loving our children well when we're involved in their lives. And there are some practical pieces for computers and phones. There's a great resource called Covenant Eyes that can be very beneficial to have that sort of filter on your computers and phones so that our kids just don't have access. They get blocked from some of the pornography sites and some of those things that we don't want our kids to have access to. And our kids are going to have normal curiosity about those things. And we really want to be the ones that answer those questions first. We don't want them finding information online that is detrimental to them. We want to provide them with healthy, accurate views of sexuality and what it looks like to become a man and a woman. And so taking a proactive stance, having those, don't make the conversations awkward. It's not awkward. Sex is a beautiful thing, and it's okay to discuss those things with your kids in a healthy way.
And, it's so critical as we talk about family, it's so critical that we are the ones that are modeling, what healthy family looks like. I know that sometimes families have different structures, and there's single parents and blended families, and there's things that make things more complicated along the way. But despite all of that, what kids are looking for are healthy relationships. Yeah. And so that's the whole point of a video like this, is to try to foster healthy, dynamic relationships so that kids understand what health looks like. Yeah. And so sometimes that's even spending time with other families that are healthy, so that kids can see it and learn from that and understand that. But we always have high value for over communicating. I think a mistake that families make sometimes is under communication and not understanding people's hearts. And so part of family is our ability to talk to one another. And that can be as simple as sitting around a bonfire, and we've had our best conversations at a hotel hot tub because it's time where we're all just sitting and being quiet, and we can hear each other's hearts. So we can't recommend that enough. Even as parents, this isn't just about parenting. This is about, remember, primary relationships, brothers and sisters talking to each other. Parents and children talking to each other, husbands and wives having time to talk to each other. It's the most important thing. And we always advocate too, especially husbands and wives, if you're married, that is the priority. It's the primariest of all primary relationships are the husbands and wives. And we need time to do that. And so we always say the best thing you can do for your children is to take care of your marriage, which means time away, date nights, and having time to actually share your heart with one another. The stronger this relationship is, the more healthy your whole family dynamic will be. And so, speaking of brothers and sisters, we want to talk just lastly about, what Amy and I teach about is something called common versus normal. And what we distinguish with that phrase, common versus normal, is when something becomes more common in the world or in society, we have the tendency then to call it normal. And we have to be really careful about that, because we don't want just the world and feelings and everything that just happens and happens more commonly to be considered normal. There's actually normal, healthy family relationship and dynamics that we're actually more interested in. And when you look at the sitcoms on TV, they're trying to tell us a new normal, and think that it's common for husbands and wives to speak so rudely to each other. There's usually, most sitcoms have some kind of dundering father and some kind of narcissistic, some woman who,
overly
controlling, and flabbergasted by all the relationships. And as we see that over and over again, as the dynamic, especially on TV, we could have the tendency to say, well, that's just normal. That's just normal way family dynamics are. And we're saying, no, we're not really interested in that type of dynamic. We're interested in healthy, the way God created family to be, and how important that is. We want to connect to that. And so a great example of that are siblings. That's why I say that. We would say in our society, when siblings just eviscerate each other and talk so rudely and meanly to each other, well, that's just normal. Well, it's common, but it's actually not normal. And so we have to be very careful about protecting those relationships as well. We believe that the sibling relationship and dynamic is one of the most powerful human relationships that there is. In fact, when you think about it, there's actually nobody on the planet that's more like you, from your DNA to your upbringing to the way that you relate to other people, than your sibling. And so what a great opportunity to really connect with people. And we feel so strongly at GoFam that we want those relationships to be strong and healthy.
And so when your kiddos are arguing, and they will, because they're humans, we give birth to humans, and when they fight, and you just say, oh, that's just normal, that's what siblings do, we actually are removing ourselves from an opportunity to step in and parent and help them navigate one of the most important relationships they will have in their entire life. And so don't miss out on the opportunity just because this is what you see everywhere and you think you expect to see it. And I would also like to say there's so many times that we just dismiss parenting opportunities because we're calling something that's common and we just think it's normal. Like our 2-year-old, it's the terrible twos, that's just the way it is. No, they're lovely little people, and it's your opportunity to help them navigate and hone in their emotions with maturity. Oh, I just can't, those teenage years are just horrible. No, you just have a beautiful opportunity as a parent to step in and help a child become a man or a child become a woman. It's a beautiful season. And so our outlook, instead of just dismissing behavior and putting it under the rug of normal, let's look at it and see it as an opportunity for us to actually help them navigate from one season of maturity to a next.
And whether we like it or not, the healthy family is becoming more uncommon. And I don't think it has to be that way.
No.
And that's the purpose of a video like this, is we want to encourage you, we want to exhort you to put all of your energy towards family, because the culture will take care of itself once we have healthy, happy families. And that's really what we're after. And so we're trying to raise the bar and say, okay, the despondent teenager that doesn't respond to their parents, well, that's common, but it's not normal. And we can draw a line and say, in our house, that's not going to be normal. And we do the best we can to draw out and communicate with them and have strong, healthy parent-child relationships. And so I believe that it can be done. And would love you to really lean into those things. And if there are those blockades, if there are those places where you just don't seem to connect, there's wonderful resources and people that can help walk through some of those things. And so we feel like it's so important. There's a lot of family dynamic that happens where people just say, well, everybody knows that I love them and I don't need to say it. But we feel like it's super important that we get in the habit of just saying things out loud. Don't leave things left unsaid, because a child can never hear too much that you love them. A spouse can never hear too much that you love them. You can't overdo it. And so if we err toward the side of over communication, or we say things out loud, especially dads. Sometimes dads can be very stoic. And we say, well, we show our love by how hard we work and how much we care for them. That's true. But how much better for us to actually say it. And so that's just our last piece of advice we want to give from a family dynamic standpoint is say the things that you feel. Get comfortable saying that I love you. Get comfortable expressing how you feel about things. Even some things that you're concerned about or some things that hurt. Communication is so important. And when we get in the habit of doing that, it actually creates healthy family dynamics.
And so if you're like, oh, this sounds really good, I don't know what steps to take, start with the simple things. Start with the meal together. Start with a game of, war sitting on the floor in your living room. If there are some things that you see now, man, I wish I would have done it differently. We can't tell you how many times we have apologized to our children. And our oldest son, those firstborn, it's like, wow, that didn't work. I am so sorry. The words, please forgive me, it's a powerful tool that unlocks relationships. And so if you find things that you are like, man, I wish I would have done it differently, just repent. It's okay to tell your children that you messed up. And, they like real people. They see when people are being real or if they're just faking it. And just be real with your kids. When you need to, just tell them. And then the other thing that I just want to let you know is that we have a website called GoFam. It's gofam.org. And on there, you can find a course called Powerhouse Family Course. So if just this little tidbit we're sharing with you has kind of intrigued you, you can get more in-depth teaching about what it looks like to nurture your family. And if you're interested in that, there is a fee to taking that. If that is something that's cost prohibitive for you, just reach out to us on our website and let us know, and we'll see what we can do to help with that.
I think if I walked out on the street with a microphone and asked people, do you think family is important? I think we would have a very high percentage that would say, yes, family is important, close to 100%.
Yeah.
I think if we asked the same people, is your family important? I think maybe the number would go down a little bit more because family is tricky and there's been some hurt and pain in family. And I think if we said, why is your family important? I think the percentage would even go down a little bit further. But I hope because of this video, you have an answer to that. Why is your family important? Well, your family is important because the culture depends on it. You actually set the culture not only in your home, but in your community. It's important because these relationships actually create health in human beings that go and change the world.
Yeah.
And that's what we believe is the important cornerstone.
Yeah.
I believe family is the fabric of our nation,
Yeah.
and we can't let that slip away. And so we just want to encourage you and your family and how important your family is.
Yeah.